Yes.
So, good evening, all. I, Dr.
Good
Rupa
evening.
Agarwal, on behalf of GPA and Dinanath Mangeshkar Eye Donation Bank, or I would say team of ophthalmologists from Dinanath Mangeshkar Hospital, I invite all the participants for today's session, come awareness, come motivational program regarding eye donation. As you all know, we all celebrate eye donation. सेलिब्रेट इन द सेन्स सेलिब्रेट करणं हा शब्द थोडासा जरा चुकीचा वाटू शकतं, पण त्या निमित्ताने त्या गोष्टीची आठवण राहून लोकांना आठवण करून देणं असं मला वाटतं, त्यामुळे त्याला सेलिब्रेशन असं म्हणता येत असेल. तर हा पंधरवडा त्यासाठी सेलिब्रेट केला जातो आणि त्या निमित्ताने म्हणजे वी वर प्लॅनिंग की 8 सप्टेंबरच्या आधी आपला इव्हेंट व्हावा, पण विथ सगळ्यांचे टाइम जुळवून येण्यामध्ये आणि चांगला प्रोग्राम प्रेझेंट करण्याच्या हेतूने थोडंसं त्याला आपल्याला डिले करून आणि तोच ती ऍक्टिव्हिटी पुढे एक्सटेंड होऊन आपण आज त्या निमित्ताने भेटत आहोत सगळ्यांना. सो I feel really honored to be part of this whole event, and as GPA president, I also would urge all the attendees to make best possible use of today's information, whatever we all will be we will be getting from our speakers. आणि त्याचबरोबरीने म्हणजे जेव्हा आम्ही या सगळ्या प्रोग्राम बद्दलचं आमच्या कन्व्हेनर बरोबर डिस्कशन वगैरे होत होतो, तर म्हणजे नुसतं सायन्स नाही तर कवीच्या भाषेमध्ये सुद्धा म्हणजे असं डोळे म्हटल्यानंतर त्याला इतकी सुंदर सुंदर इतकी वेगळी वेगळी उपमा, म्हणजे जर अंताक्षरी वगैरे खेळायला लागलो तर अर्धा एक तास तर नुसतं डोळ्यावरचीच गाणे घेऊ शकतात, इतकं इतकं सुंदर त्याला सांगितलेलं आहे. आणि ती सुंदरता जर म्हणजे त्याचबरोबर नाही, दुसरा एक मुद्दा मी विचार करत होतो ते दान देणं, म्हणजे स्पिरिच्युअल भाषेमध्ये दान अशा गोष्टीचं द्यायला पाहिजे ज्याचा समोरच्याला खरंच गरज आहे आणि उपयोग बेस्ट पॉसिबल प्रकारचा उपयोग होऊ शकतो. नॉर्मली जी आपण वापरत असतो ती वस्तू दान करणं हे श्रेष्ठ असतं, म्हणजे आपण न वापरलेल्या वस्तूला दान करणं हा शब्द जनरली स्पिरिच्युअल भाषेमध्ये वापरला जात नाही. पण अबाउट नेत्रदान मात्र आपलं आयुष्य संपल्यानंतर जरी आपण आपले नेत्र कुणा दुसऱ्याला वापरायला देऊ शकू तर त्या व्यक्तीचं आयुष्य सुद्धा तेवढंच रंगीत किंवा तेवढंच डोळ्यांना दिसण्यासारखं होऊ शकेल. ह्या कल्पनेने मात्र मला स्वतःला असं की खरंच आपला यूज काहीतरी आपल्या नंतर होऊ शकेल ही फीलिंग येत आहे. सो विदाउट मच डिले आय introduce today's our conveners. First, I would like to announce our speakers for today are Dr. Shrikant Joshi sir, Dr. Samir Datar sir, Dr. Devika Joshi, and Dr. Suchi Smita Behre. Yes. So with all these eminent speakers, we have today's conveners, Dr. Amrut Gunteja and Dr. Shilpa Joshi. So Dr. Amrut Gunteja, he has completed his BHMS and he is a family physician consultant homeopath. He is practicing since last 20 years at Shri Anand Clinic and Raksha Clinic at Siahngad Road. Tasas Dr. Shilpa Joshi, she has completed her BHMS in 97 and she is practicing at Siahngad Road. Along with that, she has done her further education and interested in the practice. So without delay, I will hand over the charge to both the conveners, Dr. Amrut Gunteja and Dr. Shilpa Joshi, madam. Please take the charge.
Yeah, very good evening. Shall we start?
Yes, please.
Yes. Good evening all, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Shrikant Joshi sir. He has done his MBBS and MS from University of Pune. He has done training in ophthalmic diagnostics at Moorfields Eye Hospital, London, a course in neuro-ophthalmology at Madurai, training in intraocular implant surgery with Dr. Arnott at UK. He is honorary eye surgeon at DMH and Sanjeevan. He is associated with many organizations and social awareness programs. He is recognized postgraduate teacher in ophthalmology for University of Pune Bharati Vidyapit and DN Board, Delhi. He is a life member of IMA and Pune, Maharashtra, Delhi, and All India Ophthalmic Societies. So I'm happy to introduce Dr. Shrikant Joshi, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Audio, thank you, Dr. Gundecha. I thank Dr. Rupa Agarwal, General Practitioner Association's President, and conveners today. It is really fortune that we are able to contact with so many practitioners who are eager to know about the Netradan. As Dr. Rupa Agarwal has very poetically said, that eye has really lot many correlations in public mind. So I would really be happy for all of you who are listening for today's program. I am happy that you all have agreed to know about such divine or precious donation program. नेत्रदान 15 जागृती अशी नुकतीच पार पडली. वेणू माधव आय बँक तर्फे आम्ही दीनानाथला सर्व प्रकारच्या चांगल्या नेत्र शस्त्रक्रिया या नेत्रदाना संबंधाने करतो. आमच्याकडे डॉक्टर दातार, डॉक्टर सुचिस्मिता, डॉक्टर देविका हे सगळे त्याविषयी विशेष ट्रेनिंग घेतलेले सगळे तज्ञ आहेत. आणि ह्या नेत्रदानाविषयी 20-25 वर्षापूर्वी जेवढी जागृती होती त्याहून जास्त होणं आपल्याला अपेक्षित आहे. वाढत्या तंत्रज्ञानामुळे आणि डॉक्टर्सच्या ट्रेनिंगमुळे आणि चांगल्या औषधांमुळे आपण एका दान केलेल्या डोळ्याचे 5 ते 6 जणांना नेत्रदान करून त्यांना दृष्टी देऊ शकतो. त्याची विविध तंत्र आता अवगत आहेत. त्यासाठी लागणाऱ्या वेगवेगळ्या लेझर आणि इतर उपचारांबरोबरच आमचे तज्ञ त्याचा कायम पाठपुरावा करतात. 24 तास या नेत्रपेढ्या चालू असतात आणि त्याच्या संबंधाने जी बारकाईने माहिती द्यावी त्यातली प्राथमिक माहिती डॉक्टर देविका जोशी देतील. डॉक्टर समीर दातार त्यातल्या विशेष ऑपरेशन्स विषयी आपल्याला सांगतील. डॉक्टर सुचिस्मिता बेहरे या नेहमीची जी तंत्रज्ञानाने होणारी शस्त्रक्रिया आहे त्याविषयीची अद्ययावत बारकाईने माहिती देतील. आपल्या जनरल प्रॅक्टिशनर्सचा ह्यात फार मोठं योगदान होऊ शकतं. केव्हाही कुठल्याही नेत्रदानाच्या आधी त्या माणसाचा मृत्यू होताना त्याला जनरल प्रॅक्टिशनर हेच नेहमी पहिल्यांदा भेटतात. त्यांच्याच मदतीने ते कासावीस झालेले नातेवाईक पुढच्या गोष्टी अरेंज करत असतात. डेथ सर्टिफिकेट देताना जनरल प्रॅक्टिशनर्सनी याविषयी पेशंटमध्ये जागरूकता दाखवली तर कोणीही हे नेत्रदान करू शकतं. नेत्रदानाचं रजिस्ट्रेशन केलं नसलं तरी करू शकतं. आणि अशा परिस्थितीत त्यांना पुढचं मार्गदर्शन करण्यासाठी आम्ही आमच्या विशेष तुम्हाला माहिती देण्याच्या आत्ताच्या उपयोगाचा पुढे खूप पेशंटना फायदा होईल अशी मला खात्री आहे. आज आपल्या ह्या प्राथमिक माहितीनंतर तंत्रज्ञानाने उपयुक्त अशी माहिती पुढचे 3 आमचे तज्ञ देतील की ज्यांचं याविषयी विशेष ज्ञान आहे. आणि त्यानंतर शंका समाधानात आपण अजून अनेक गोष्टी विचारू शकता. आपण आम्हाला या आय बँकेला संधी दिल्याबद्दल आपणा सर्वांचे धन्यवाद. आणि मी कन्व्हिनरना आग्रह धरतो की त्यांनी आमच्या पुढच्या पहिल्या स्पीकर विषयी सुरुवात करावी. धन्यवाद. Dr. Gundecha, please.
Yeah. No, yes. Thank you. It was truly a wonderful motivational talk from Dr. Shrikant Joshi, sir. And thanks, sir, for giving your valuable time and knowledge to us on this divine mission of eye donation awareness. Now, let's move on ahead to our second speaker, Dr. Devika Joshi Karve. She is a cataract, cornea, and refractive surgeon. She has done her MS ophthalmology from the reputed AFMC Pune, and she has also done her DNB ophthalmology too. She is also a fellow of International Council of Ophthalmology, FICO, in cornea and external diseases from University of Eye Hospital, Bern, Switzerland. Now she is also a panel consultant at DMH and an honorary consultant at Ramakrishna Math Polyclinic, Pune. She also works at Dr. Joshi Eye Clinic, Karvenagar. She is also a member of Managing Committee, Pune Ophthalmology Society. She has presented various papers at national and international conferences and severe publications in the Indeed journals too. So let's welcome Dr. Devika ma'am on this digital dais today. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am, for the kind introduction.
माझं खूप जवळ येतं.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm thankful to GPA for organizing this webinar for information about eye donation, especially President Ma'am Dr. Rupa and her team. So with the background of the eye donation fortnight, which just ended on 8th September, I'll be trying to give you some basic information about eye donation and eye banking. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So these are a few famous personalities who are working in collaboration with Eye Bank Association of India and their ambassadors for eye donation in our country, and they are promoting various awareness campaigns for eye donation, and they themselves have pledged their eyes. So looking at some amount of statistics that we have, the District Blindness Control Society is the main society which looks after the eye donation activities in the district. The National Program for Control of Blindness has decentralized and given the functioning to the district societies for this. And looking at the general trend, you can see that the eye donation activities have kept on increasing every year with the increase in awareness among the general public and among the doctors as well. So these are some of our statistics from Venu Madhav Eye Bank. As you can see, the numbers are steadily increasing, and so are the number of keratoplasties that are being done every year. So coming to some amount of knowledge of anatomy of the eye, as we all know, the eye globe consists of the front clear transparent cornea, which is set in the sclera, which is white and rigid. And then comes the transparent lens and the retina of the eye. So anything that causes damage to the cornea or any disease to the cornea causes a loss of transparency of the cornea, and then there is lack of transmission of light and causes of corneal blindness. So what all can be the causes of corneal blindness? Suppose there has been some road traffic accident, some industrial injury, then some corneal infection like bacterial or corneal ulcer, some congenital disorders like keratoconus causing scarring here, or sometimes it happens post-operatively. Like for example, if a patient who has already a diseased cornea has undergone a cataract surgery, then there is progressive opacification of the cornea, and then the patient loses vision due to corneal reasons. So who can be an eye donor? So everyone and anyone can be a donor irrespective of his age, sex, or blood group or religion. The cornea itself is very avascular, and so we need not really match the blood group. Suppose someone has undergone some eye treatments, like for example, he has undergone a routine cataract surgery, or he has undergone a laser for diabetic retinopathy, that person can still donate his eyes because the cornea is left untouched. It has not been affected by the disease itself. If someone has any spectacles, or if someone has any hypertension, diabetes, some systemic disorders, that person can still donate his eyes. Sometimes it happens that the cornea that is donated, it may not be up to the mark and it may not be used for transplantation to another person himself, but it can still be used for other purposes like postgraduate surgical training, or for educational purposes, or for research. So there are some systemic contraindications for eye donations, mainly infectious diseases like hepatitis, HIV, then septicemias due to bacteria, fungi, or viruses, all the metastatic cancers which may also be metastatic to the eye. And if the death has been due to some unknown cause, the cause may be anything, for example, some kind of poisoning, then the eye is not suitable for donation. Considering the present scenario of the pandemic, currently the COVID-19 infection and death due to COVID-19 is also a contraindication for eye donation. If the person has any active inflammation or infection in the eye, then again the eye is not suitable for donation. And if the eye has some pre-existing corneal opacities due to earlier trauma surgery, then again the cornea cannot be donated. So here comes in the role of the eye bank. What does an eye bank really do? So it is a non-profit organization which deals with the collection, storage, and distribution of cornea for the purpose of corneal grafting or research. So these are really the functions of the eye bank. So eye bank, for it to be set up, there are certain guidelines which are given by the Eye Bank Association of India. And once they are fulfilled, the eye bank inspector comes in and then he gives the registration for the eye bank, and then it can start functioning. So eye bank can do the function of tissue harvesting, then tissue evaluation, tissue preservation, about which I'll be talking later, distribution, and then public awareness and research related to corneal blindness. So what are really the steps of eye donation? First would be the donor selection, where the place of death is there, whether it is in the hospital, whether it is at home. Then would be the tissue retrieval. The eye itself would be retrieved in a particular manner, about which I'll be talking. The tissue retrieved is then examined and stored in a proper medium, and then transported and distributed to the place where the transplant is going to be taking place. So some facts about eye donation which we need to know, and which we also need to educate our patients about, that eye donation in India is better to be carried out within 6 to 8 hours of death, because otherwise the bacterial colonization risks of infections increases. Only the cornea part is usually used for transplantation purposes, and to retrieve the eye after that, it usually takes only 15 to 20 minutes. The eye bank is the place where it is analyzed, processed, stored, and then transferred for transplantation. And the whole process comes under the Human Organ Transplantation Act, and it is very controlled by the authorities. And there is no cost to donation, nor is there any cost to buy or sell the eyes. In fact, it is a criminal act to do so. Then eyes can be donated by the family of the deceased, even if the deceased during his life has not expressed any wish that I want to donate. Despite that, if after his death, if the family wishes and consents, then the eyes can be donated. So the written informed consent of two relatives is required before the eye donation is carried out. And eye donation is usually not beyond the teachings of any religion. It is well accepted in all religions. So if there is a disease, if there is a death, and one wants to have an eye donation, then what are the precautions that need to be taken? So the eyelids of the deceased need to be closed, and the fan in the room has to be switched off so that the cornea does not dry up by the time the transplantation is done. Raise the head end of the pillow of the deceased so that the eye is always elevated, and then one can contact the nearest eye bank according to where locality of the cities is there. If one does not know any number of the eye bank, 1919 is the telephone line where one can call and get information about the local eye banks, and then you are directed to the nearest local eye bank. So this is the process how the eye is retrieved from the deceased. It is called enucleation. It is done after preparing the parts in a sterile manner with cleaning with betadine, and a small peritomy is done, the conjunctiva is moved aside, then all the recti muscles, the extraocular muscles of the eye are released, and then finally the optic nerve is cut with the help of sharp scissors, and the eyeball is retrieved. In place of that, usually a synthetic globe or at least a cotton ball of appropriate size is placed so that the lid contours are maintained and there is no disfigurement of the face after donation. So after this enucleation is done, what is done is the corneal button is excised. Sometimes some eye donation teams directly excise this button instead of excising the whole globe. So an incision is made around the sclera, then the cornea is freed from the uveal tissue, iris and choroid, and then this tissue that is retrieved, it is transferred to an appropriate medium for further usage. So what medium can be used for storage of the tissue once it is removed from the deceased eyes? Usually it is commonly taken in a moist chamber where it can stay for up to 24 hours. But if we are planning to use the eye thereafter for say 7 to 10 days, then it has to be transferred to a better medium which has all the nutrients and electrolytes for the survival of the cornea. It is usually commonly Optisol or MK medium. And the other uses that can be possible with the eye apart from the cornea is that the white rigid scleral part, it can be used as a patch graft in various surgeries like glaucoma surgeries or retinal surgeries. So this is a very schematic diagram of what is really done. The deceased part of the cornea is defined and removed, and in this place a clear and transparent corneal part is replaced. So this is a similar schematic diagram where you can see that the whole cornea, the whole thickness of the cornea is being utilized and fixed with the help of sutures. So this corneal transplantation process can be carried out by several methods. The most initial one that was developed is the full thickness or penetrating keratoplasty, or we can use few layers of the eye, which is called a lamellar keratoplasty, and the further speakers would be speaking in detail about these keratoplasty types. So what are the myths about eye donation which are very common among the general public, and we need to make them aware that no, that is not the case. So eye donation does not cause any disfigurement of the eye, because we always try to maintain the contour of the eye after the eyeball has been retrieved, and there is no such thing that the donor becomes blind in his next life or something like that. And people with weak eyesight cannot donate. That is not the case. Most people can donate their eyes if the cause of their eye problem is non-corneal. So how can the general practitioners help in this entire process of eye donation? As Dr. Joshi said, that the general practitioner is the first point of contact for any family after their beloved person has deceased and then they want to procure a death certificate. So at that time, when the family already trusts the general practitioner, if he suggests about corneal eye donation, then they are more receptive. They are more likely to consent for the eye donation. Also, by having some flyers or informative brochures about eye donation at their clinic, the general practitioners can spread awareness among the people, mainly because many families come in contact with them, and such families are in great need of such information from the general practitioner. So this is the form of the eye bank that we have for the voluntary eye donation, where the person needs to fill in his details, and then two people would sign as witnesses. Once this form, which is for voluntary eye donation, is submitted to the eye bank office, then the person will receive a small card which can be kept in his pocket or purse, and that would say that this person has already pledged his eyes for future use. And this is the same form in local language in Marathi. And these are some of the flyers that we have for awareness of the eye donation from our eye bank. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Very good causes of corneal blindness, and regarding the donation, the contraindication regarding eye donation, and the work of the eye bank, step for eye donation, very well informed, and the process of enucleation, the method of storage, and the role of the general practitioner, very well informed, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am. We further move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Suchi Smita Behere. She's done her MS DNB ophthalmology from JIPMER, Pondicherry. She has done a cornea and refractive surgery fellowship in 2009. She is a consultant at DMH. Cornea. She will talk about the corneal transplant, common indications, technique of penetrating keratoplasty, its prognosis, ideal time of referral, what cases benefit and what cases don't benefit. Ma'am, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Namaste. So I will talk a little bit about the penetrating keratoplasty, and also what are the cases which benefit from it, and what is the ideal time of referral, and some conditions which require these surgeries. And Dr. Datar will be telling further about the more sophisticated lamellar surgeries, etc. So let me share my screen. Okay, is this visible?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So basically, as Dr. Devika rightly said, in cornea transplant, we are just exchanging the central portion of the cornea, because that is like the window to the eye. She's already told about the anatomy, but just to be brief, touch upon again. Our cornea, our eye is like a camera. So the retina or the posterior aspect could be like a film. So unless the retina is working properly, unless the connections from the retina to the brain are optimum, the vision cannot be perfect. And in order for the vision to happen, the cornea as well as the lens, which are like two lenses of the camera, should be clear. So if any problem happens in these two layers or the lenses, then the vision will be again distorted. Such a person will have, suppose their retina is strong and they have a good capacity. If we restore the clarity in the front portion of the eye, then they will be able to see. So as a doctor, it is our duty as an ophthalmologist to see how much the patient can see after a cornea transplant and advise them accordingly. So as we know, the cataract is something which which exists in this second lens, and that can be corrected. That is a correctable, much simpler form of a treatment as compared to a retinal or a corneal problem. But sometimes in these patients, they can have some forms of complicated cataract also, which needs to be addressed simultaneously. So now the cornea is the front portion, and that is like means the first point where the light touches. And if that is irregular, that means it may not be hazy, but its surface is uneven. In such situations also, patients will not be able to see, even if it is opacified due to a scar or some kind of injury which leads to a scarring, or even if there is swelling in that area, the patient will not be able to see. So in a cornea transplant, we are replacing the central area with a clear cornea. So the entire cornea is again not changed, but it is done in some situations where the problem extends throughout the cornea, like an infection. Those are rare conditions, but more commonly it is the central 8 or 9 mm of the cornea which is exchanged. Now again, we may exchange the entire thickness of the cornea, or we may just exchange a few layers depending upon where the pathology lies. So our cornea has 6 layers now, and the understanding of it is greatly improved. And we also have some new equipment to help us see, apart from just clinical examination, where the pathology lies. And so we can address specifically to those layers. This layer transplants have really improved the life of the transplanted cornea and reduced the chance of the rejection. But still, full thickness corneal transplants remain a gold standard in certain eye conditions which require these surgeries. Now, if you see the lower picture, the central area is replaced, and after some time, the patient can see through that area. So like it was told, an eye bank processes the cornea, sees the health of the cornea, and then we can decide whether that cornea can be transplanted, to which age group can it be transplanted, which layer is more healthy. Sometimes a single cornea is used for multiple patients these days because of layer transplants. So that is the advantage. So actually earlier it was 2 eyes for 2 patients. Now sometimes even 4 people can get benefited if it is optimally used. So when we do the surgery, we take the cornea from the medium. The medium allows us to keep the cornea for a longer time, like from 2 days to sometimes even up to a week or 10 days, depending upon the medium used, so that we can use the tissue more optimally. A specular microscopy is used in the eye bank. It is also used on patients to assess the health of the cornea. So when an eyeball comes, we examine this in the eye bank using specular microscopy whenever possible to see the health of the innermost layer of the cornea, that is the endothelium. On the right side, you see that above picture, this is where the endothelium is very healthy. This is how the normal cells are supposed to be. These cells have a pumping action, and they are present in the posterior most layer of the cornea. If the cells do not function properly, what happens is water will come inside the cornea and it will make the cornea swell. So instead of glass-like appearance in the cornea, it becomes like ground glass or edematous. So this set of patients also who develop this problem will require cornea transplants. So whenever we get cornea from donors, we assess the endothelial health, because that is probably the most important part of the cornea. Suppose that cornea doesn't have very good endothelium, still the cornea can be used. The front layers of the cornea are used for many conditions, and so it is definitely usable. So these are layered transplants which will be covered later on. Going to the common indications, most common indications is whenever a patient has cornea blindness. That means the retina and the posterior layers are fairly okay in function, but the front layer, that is the cornea, is defective. So if we replace the cornea with a healthy cornea, then the vision, some amount of vision improvement is expected. So this can happen due to corneal opacity. That means a whitish area in the glass-like cornea, which should be actually clear, but now it has become whitish. That can happen either due to an injury or an infection or some kind of a birth-related or acquired opacity. So this is again, for example, the central area has become opacified because of a viral infection, and these can happen at any point of time, right from childhood, early childhood to later in life, and the patient slowly loses vision. Such patients, we can do a cornea transplant like this and restore the vision. Now this patient also has a cataract. They may have other issues also like glaucoma and retinal problems. So generally a teamed approach is required for these patients, and I would like to say that it's not just one person doing the transplant, but right from the collection of the eye to the processing till the staff involved in the entire hospital, it works as a team. It's a multi-specialty approach these days with the pediatric person or a glaucoma surgeon or a cataract surgeon or a cornea surgeon, because of so much of technological improvement enhancements. By giving this kind of an approach, we give the best result to the patient, especially in small children. So now the cornea is placed there with the help of sutures. Now these sutures help in adherence of this transplanted portion with the rest of the cornea. Now our cornea, unlike the other parts of the body, does not have blood vessels if it is healthy. So it takes a slightly long time for this area to heal. Now, elsewhere in the face or anywhere, if we put stitches, the healing is very fast, like in a week or two. But in cornea, it's not like that. It will take minimum 3 months for the healing to happen. And for even more stronger bonding between these two areas, we need to sometimes leave it for a year or more. Sometimes these stitches will be left lifelong also, depending on the situation. And sometimes we may want to remove them earlier. So again, depending upon the type of stitches, now they can be interrupted or they can be continuous based on surgeon preference, based on the indication, and they may be removed at different points of time. So after removal of the stitches, this is how the cornea would look. It looks almost like a normal cornea, but during that time, that is the post-surgery period, there is a slightly different kind of an appearance of the eye. So now some other indications in children, for example, cornea blindness is very well known in children. It can be in one eye or it can be in both the eyes. Sometimes there can be a coexistent glaucoma or a cataract in these children, and we need to examine how much visual potential is there, and many times we have to act early. Sometimes it may not be a corneal opacity, but it can be something in the retina, like even cancers of the eye called as retinoblastoma, which actually looks as if there is opacity in the cornea. Like in this picture, it looks like a corneal opacity, but actually it's something behind, and it needs to be addressed very quickly to save the life of the child. So we need to refer these kind of patients very early. The more time we lose, the chances of children getting back vision reduces because of an entity called as amblyopia or lazy eye. So if the cornea is white, then the light rays do not enter the retina, and then the brain doesn't know that that kind of a vision exists. And before their 5th year, if we don't correct, in fact, in small children, the earlier we correct, the results will be better. They will, if we don't correct it, then even if they undergo transplant at later age, then the benefits will be less and they will not achieve full vision. So that is why it is important to treat these cases early. Some cases they can be in both the eyes also. The problem, like in the lower picture, other issue is that the eye's structure is not normal, or it's a kind of there is a dysgenesis, meaning the structures are not fully developed. So in these cases it's really challenging, because the cornea transplant itself is one thing, and then the post surgery, the problems that can happen are also a little bit more in these children because rejection rates are more. But there are a lot of kids who do fairly well as well. So there's a lot of case to case variation. And again, kind of a multi-disciplinary approach is required for these patients to give the best results. So some children towards later on in childhood, they develop opacities, or it may not be observed in when they are very small, because children do not complain. That is the importance of checking eyes in children every year as soon as they are born, in the initial few months, and at least before 5 years they have to get a checkup. Ideally they should get a checkup yearly actually, because there can be multiple problems in them, not just corneal problems. They can have simpler problems like refractive errors which need to be corrected. Like in this case, this is a corneal dystrophy where both the corneas and inner layers of the cornea are weak, and then it is becoming slowly whitish. So in these children also, we may do surgeries earlier. Sometimes we wait till the child grows a little bit older, where we feel the results are better. So there is a lot of difference in the way each child is treated based on the eye condition. There are some corneal conditions which coexist with retinal issues also, like this. For example, we unfortunately cannot give them useful vision at this point of time, at least, because they cannot perceive light at all, meaning the retina has no capacity of seeing in spite of doing a cornea transplant. So doing transplants for a certain set of patients like this is will only give them more pain or discomfort and more hospital visits. And in that situation, we differ from doing a transplant. But everywhere, wherever it is possible, if the child is seeing light, we must make an attempt to give them some useful vision. So this is another common situation where we see in our country corneal ulcers, and many times due to injuries in farmers, when they, vegetative matter, some kind of a stick or mud enters the eye, and then they develop infection because of fungus or bacteria, or due to various other reasons. So this is another condition where early referral can save the eye. So in the initial left picture, you see there's an infection in the corneal level, and then slowly in these two pictures, the infection is spreading deeper and going inside the eye. There is pus inside the eye. Now, at this stage, we can save the eye by giving adequate antibiotics and finding out what is the reason. We send the pus for testing to know what organism has caused it, and then we start treating. We can give injections also inside the eye on the cornea till it heals, and later we can plan a cornea transplant if there is a scar, or we can do other procedures so to improve the vision. But suppose like in the right lower portion, the ulcer has healed, but there is a scar. This patient cannot see properly, but we'll try to improve the vision in a next step. But sometimes these ulcers are they come to us very late, because they use some native medicine inside the eye, and a few days goes off before they take a treatment, and then it becomes very severe, and we have to take them up for emergency corneal transplants. And like in the right side, this transplanted eye, in the left side, both the pictures, you can see the infection eating up the entire cornea. And if it spreads till the retina also, then we may lose the eye. So the time duration for this is very short actually. If we catch it early, we can save most of the eyes in today's scenario, at least. That is the importance of having tissues with us, and that is the importance of eye donation to save these kind of patients in a timely manner. So this is one more situation which happens in youngsters and in children. Many times children who rub their eyes a lot with allergy, or as such, they may develop weakness in the cornea. Here in the left side picture, there is no whitishness in the cornea, but there is a lot of bulging in the cornea, if you see. And the right top picture, there is a thinning and bulging of the cornea. That is, there's a condition called as keratoconus, which is being probably picked up more often these days and treated, but then it is not very uncommon. What you need to suspect is if a person complains of repeated change in the glasses, or a youngster telling that vision is worsening progressively, or in spite of glasses vision is not optimum, then we have to always suspect this particular eye condition. It can even happen, or it can happen in children or in young individuals. It can happen in during the pregnancy period also. In women, due to hormonal changes, we see this kind of eye condition coming up for the first time during or after the pregnancy in the next few years. So if we catch this problem early, then we can treat it and we can prevent it from worsening. But suppose it goes into the advanced stage, then what happens is these patients also develop a scar like in this lower right picture, and that time we need to do a full thickness transplant. But if we catch it somewhere over here when it is in the advanced stage but still scarring is not much, then we can do a layer transplant which has better results and which has a longer life and which is beneficial for the patient. And if we catch it in a much earlier stage, then we need not go into these stages at all. So for this also there are special scans called as the corneal topography to pick up these eye conditions in a very early stage and to halt them or prevent their progression. There are treatments now. This is the topography machine which scans the entire cornea and picks up any kind of a bend, irregularity or a bending or thinning in the cornea, and helps us in many other surgeries as well. So now this is a case now on the left top side. There is no scar much, but there is a lot of irregularity. So this patient cannot drive, he cannot read, he cannot do his day-to-day activities because of very distorted vision, and his vision will not improve just by glasses. So these patients require correction in the form of surgery. Then they may require specialized contact lenses to regularize the cornea and also some amount of glasses. So this is it's a layer transplant, but very much similar to a full thickness transplant. So now on the right top, this is the same patient with the restored corneal shape. And in the right top images, I just wanted to highlight another instrument which helps us greatly in these surgeries is known as the anterior segment OCT. This actually helps us to see the cut section of the cornea apart from our microscope, that is the slit lamp examination. This gives us a confirmation of where the scar is. Does this patient require a full thickness transplant? Can we just do a layer transplant? And we can see that the architecture is restored after a surgery, and then we can this is the use of modern technology. So this is one more condition where cornea can get into trouble. We have an inner layer in the cornea called these cells will reduce in number. The function of these cells is to keep the cornea clear. It will pump out the fluid and then it will throw it back. So basically our cornea remains clear. As we age, the cells will reduce. In some of us, we are prone to more rapid reduction of cells, or some of us are born with certain dystrophies in these layers. So these patients, when they undergo some other surgery like cataract surgery, if this is not picked up, or even otherwise also, they can develop swelling in the cornea. In the lower right picture, you can see there is fluid inside the cornea. Means this layer is not working properly, and after some years, that will become a scar, and then light will be cut off from the retina, and the vision will further blur. Nowadays, even though in this stage itself, we can do layer transplants. For a person who has scar also, we can do full thickness transplant. We can in fact prevent this problem by picking it up using specular microscopy, the same instrument we discussed earlier, and we'll take adequate precautions during the surgery. We have special gels also to protect this layer when we do cataracts. Usually when these people develop very hard cataracts, when it's neglected, which is very common in our country, and they undergo the surgery, it becomes more complicated. So we can do it at the right time in a better manner to prevent this. So this is also a set of patients which we do cornea transplants in. Now, selectively we change the inner layer, which is called as DSEC or DMEC, where the results can be almost like a normal eye. Unlike in a penetrating keratoplasty, the results are very good. So now this is another condition called as corneal dystrophy, where people progressively develop whitishness in both the eyes. Generally, they develop in both the eyes, one eye after the other. This can happen at any age actually. This is a set that can happen in childhood or later towards 40s and 50s, and slowly people lose vision. Here also we try to do layer transplants these days, but some advanced cases we will have to do a full thickness transplants, and they have good results. Now again, another situation is injuries, which are very common. So injuries can be just due to some physical injury, or it can be because of chemical injuries. So both these conditions, because the cornea is the exposed part of the eye, that is the first part which will get injured. And after we initially close the wound, there will be a scar formation, and that scar will produce an opacity and an irregularity, which if not corrected with other measures, like there are ways to correct it, glasses, contact lenses, lasers. For people where this is not possible, where there is a lot of irregularity, like this picture in the lower right side, it is a very bad injury, but in these conditions also cornea transplants come handy. Sometimes they come as an emergency also we do, because suppose the corneal area, there's a part which is missing or there's a tissue loss, then we have to close that using a emergency tissue. That is also importance of having a tissue readily available. Many of these people are children actually. This is another rather sad situation in our country, that is chemical injuries from chuna burns, which we see very commonly. Here the lime which goes inside the eye burns the eye within few minutes itself, and then we'll have to do multiple surgeries to get these children back to normalcy. And cornea transplants also are done in this scenario after we correct the eye surface using other treatments. Like okay, there are a lot of treatments which and even stem cell transplants are being done even at our hospital very successfully, along with the cornea transplants and other grafting methods, along with lid surgeries. Again, a multi-team approach is required sometimes for these eye conditions to restore the vision. This is a very bad case of chemical injury, acid burn, acid assault, where the eye has melted off within a day. And in this area, we are transplanting the cornea as well as the sclera over here. So even the white portion of the eye will be used in some conditions. The white portion can be stored for a longer time, and it can be used in these emergency situations, so that we can just save the eye. These patients will require multiple surgeries, but at least if eye is available, then we can save their eye. So what are the problems after transplants? See, rejections are known thing, because the cornea doesn't belong to our body. Our body can reject. Nowadays, with the layered transplants and the drugs which we use, like drops as well as medicines, we are able to reduce the rejection rates to a lot of extent. But yes, it can happen. And it is not the end of the world. If rejection happens, it gets picked up early and treated early. Many times the patient will recover completely also. But suppose they again rejection is severe or repeated rejection, certain conditions they are prone for rejections in youngsters or in high risk grafts. So in those cases, we can repeat cornea transplants, and we can even do something called as a keratoprosthesis for end stage eye disease, corneal problems. There is a kind of a cylindrical glass-like structure which is done along with the cornea in the peripheral rim, if you observe. So in this combination also surgeries are done to restore the vision in high-risk patients. So I would like to conclude by saying that this is a beautiful initiative. Yes, we must donate our eyes and leave back the vision, as the caption is so rightly chosen. Thank you, Dr. Rupa and all the panelists for this great initiative. And though this requires a teamed approach and so much effort, everything starts from an eye donation. And if there is no eyes donated, then we cannot do anything. So thank you so much.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Suchismita Behre ma'am. It was indeed a lucid, enlightening talk in this awareness drive. Thanks for brushing up on multiple aspects from anatomy of eye till detailing on cataract, optimal use of eye, instrumentation, corneal ulcers, injuries, corneal transplant with indications, and also covering specifically the pediatric segment, and keratoplasty with the details. Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Thank you.
Now, let's step up further. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce to our last and eminent speaker, a multifaceted personality, Dr. Sameer Datar sir. He is MBBS, DOMS, DNB, done his long-term fellowship in prestigious LV Prasad Eye Institute, Hyderabad, and currently working as a corneal and ocular surface surgeon in DMH. And he is also privately practicing, and he has bagged multiple awards and achievements. To name the few, he has received MB Jawar Award in 2017, Best Paper in AIOS 2015, MOS Conference in Mumbai 2009, Best Video in MOSCON 2010, in Sangli for Boston keratoprosthesis. He has also bagged first prize for a paper on cultivated limbal stem cells transplantation at iIndia 2006 in Pune. He has also done multiple presentations and publications on his name, nationally and internationally. He has worked as a lecturer in ophthalmology, MIMER Medical College, Pune. He has extensive work experience at LV Prasad Institute, Hyderabad, has completed iBank training there, and is a member of iBank Association of India. Has multiple working experience with renowned institutes too. He has also held prestigious positions in various managing and scientific committees, and also being assistant editor for Sovinet Moscow 2001. So let's welcome Dr. Datar sir. Move to you, Dr. Datar sir.
Thank you, madam, for the kind words. I hope I am audible. I would like to share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Devika and Suchismita have very elaborately spoken about the basics of eye donation and the basics of corneal transplant. In fact,
हिला काय करतो छोटा डबा आहे ना त्याच्यात दाबून धर हिला.
so we'll go ahead with, as Suchismita was telling you, that we have we can transplant the cornea as a whole, as she has shown, as a penetrating keratoplasty. We do have other options where we transplant the cornea in layers. For example, if the entire cornea is not affected, only the anterior layer is affected, then we have anterior lamellar keratoplasty, and if only the inner layer or the posterior layer is affected, we have a posterior lamellar keratoplasty. So basically, if we divide that, we have DALK, ALK, which forms the anterior layer of corneal transplantation. For example, if you consider, if you can see this image, this is the cornea with the stroma. Cornea basically consists of a stroma, a deep endothelial layer, and a superficial epithelial layer. Now, if there is a opacity or there is a problem in the anterior stroma of the cornea, what we do is we only transplant the anterior layer of the cornea, the one which the arrow is showing is transplanted. That is called as deep anterior lamellar keratoplasty or anterior lamellar keratoplasty. Second is, what remains is the endothelium and the Descemet's membrane, other than the stroma. So if there is a problem in those layers, what we transplant is the Descemet's stripping endothelial keratoplasty or the Descemet's membrane endothelial keratoplasty, where only the inner layers of the cornea are transplanted. Third thing is, which I would be elaborating in this talk, is the Boston keratoprosthesis or the orokeratoprosthesis, which is now made in India as well, and a certain small little corneal surgeries where eye donated corneal tissue is used, like patch grafts, so on and so forth. Now, first we go on to deep anterior lamellar keratoplasty. I would show you a small video which would make things easy for you to actually see how we do a lamellar keratoplasty surgery. Now, as Suchismita was telling you, if we have to transplant the entire cornea here, it would be a penetrating keratoplasty. You can see this white opacity here. Now, this white opacity is present only in the anterior part of the cornea. And so this is called as a trephine. So this trephine is nothing but a circular blade which marks and cuts the cornea into its depth. It can be either full thickness penetrating or up to a certain level. Now, after trephining up to a certain level, there are certain techniques whereby we can dissect that corneal tissue. Now, this particular technique which I am using here is called as a big bubble technique. So primarily you dissect with the hand a little bit, and with a 26 gauge needle, you inject a small little air bubble which goes into the space between the stroma and the Descemet's membrane. Once you achieve this bubble, I will fast forward this surgery so that it will save time. Once that bubble is achieved, you can cut in the required zone, and then you can dissect the cornea layer by layer, the anterior stroma up to the Descemet's membrane. Basically, the pathological part of the cornea, which is opacified, can be removed, leaving behind the clear Descemet's membrane. Now, advantage of this surgery is that you transplant only the anterior layer of the cornea, so chances of rejection, because rejection of the cornea, which is one of the major complications of corneal transplant, is limited mainly to the posterior surface or anterior surface as well to some extent, But if you transplant only one layer, the chances of rejection are equally minimized. So this is how you dissect that cornea up to, and what you can see below is the clear Descemet's membrane. If you remember the first picture, there was an opacity there. And now after all this clear excision is done, you eventually go and you can remove the Descemet's of the donor tissue as well, and then secure the donor tissue onto the recipient bed as you do in a routine keratoplasty with either 8 sutures or 16 sutures. But suture related problems which are there in other penetrating keratoplasties are also seen in this kind of lamellar keratoplasty, but chances of graft failure or graft decompensation are less in these surgeries because you transplant only the anterior layer, and the inner Descemet's layer is that of the hosts. So as I said, it has lesser rejection rate, it has a better stability and a faster recovery. Of course, there is a learning curve. Now, to whom it can be done, as Suchismita was telling, if there is an opacity throughout the thickness of the cornea, these surgeries can't be given as an option to those patients. So now, for example, these patients who have, say, post-facial palsy, those who have lag ophthalmos or who have infections on the superficial cornea and which are healed, cured, leaving behind such kind of scars which are pertaining only to the anterior 2/3 of the corneal stroma, those basically are good candidates. We can achieve good results with lamellar transplants, only the anterior lamellar transplant. Similarly, these patients. Now, in these patients, as I was saying, if the patient has lag ophthalmos, now you as general practitioners, it's important to know, eye donation, you are like the main people who can counsel the relatives of the deceased for eye donation. Equally, you are important in telling the patient who is requiring corneal transplant of what kind of surgery they need and what is the importance of the surgery that needs to be done in their eye. So in either ways, the procuring of tissue and utilization of the tissue, general practitioners, I think, would always form the mainstay. So if you come across these patients who have white opacities in the eye, for example, these patients with facial palsy or stroke who have opacities and dry eye, what we do is we do these lamellar surgeries, of course, with a tarsorrhaphy. Tarsorrhaphy is a surgery where we stitch the lids in the lateral 1/3 of the lateral 1/3 of the lids are stitched permanently to reduce the exposed area, so it doesn't, the dry eye or the lag ophthalmos or the dry eye part doesn't recur. Now, as Suchismita said, keratoconus is another condition which also has it's a good candidate for anterior lamellar corneal transplants, and those grafts really remain good for as long as 8 to 10 years also. Now, these patients are also patients with keratoconus and post hydrops where we have done. Then these patients are dystrophies. Now, all dystrophies will not have good results. Some dystrophies are known to recur on even penetrating transplants, but then depending on what dystrophy it is, you can decide whether to do anterior lamellar graft or posterior or the penetrating grafts. Sometimes you have slow recovery. I will not go into the details of this because basically this presentation was meant for corneal surgeons or ophthalmologists. So I'll just skip through the problems and show you the importance of the various methods of transplanting. As large as 10 millimeter diameter grafts can be very nicely done with the use of this lamellar transplant surgery method. Certain infections also can be treated with lamellar transplants, not all though, because infections, if they are deeper, are known to recur. So we'll skip through the problems. Now we come to the second method of transplanting in the tissue, is the Descemet stripping endothelial keratoplasty, where only the inner layer of the cornea is transplanted. Now, advantage of this DSEC is it is relative, the learning curve is more, but the surgical time is lesser. So it is a little faster surgery, provided you do it nicely. There are no sutures. So all suture related problems like vascularization of the graft, astigmatism, the rejection, all these problems are abolished or not present in patients who have undergone DSEC. Of course, disadvantages come with advantages. So there is more primary failures, more learning curve. Rejection, there are mixed reports in the literature, but rejection rate probably is more or less same, maybe a little less than penetrating. Now, again, who are the good candidates for DSEC? Now, patients who have undergone cataract surgery, for some reason, the post-op period, it has complicated in a way whereby the corneal tissue is the cornea of the patient is decompensated. It is edematous, it is cloudy, it is not clear, and is not giving good vision to the patient. These patients are good candidates for DSEC, provided there is no scar. These edematous corneas, if they are not for long periods without giving any scarring in the stroma, are good candidates for descemet stripping endothelial keratoplasty. Again, I'll show you a surgery. This particular surgery, if you are seeing here, is done for a patient who is having Fuchs dystrophy, as Sushi Smita told you in her talk. So Fuchs dystrophy is a dystrophy where the inner layer or the endothelium of the cornea, endothelial layer of the cornea is not good, it is damaged, and it is not adequately maintaining the transparency of the cornea. So in such cases, there are certain criteria which you decide whether you go ahead with the cataract surgery only or do cataract surgery along with a descemet stripping endothelial keratoplasty. So I will again rush through the steps of this surgery because you need not see the entire video, it's a bit long. So basically this blue thing that you see is an artificial anterior chamber. It is an instrument on which you mount the corneal tissue that you've procured from the donor eye, such that it mimics that of the natural eye, and it forms the artificial anterior chamber. With the help of saline and viscoelastic substances and the assembly of this machine, it mimics the actual eyeball. These are instruments whereby you dissect the layer between the stroma and the endothelium or the descemet membrane. This is manual dissection that I am doing. You have automated machines also for this. Whatever you are good at and available at your hand, you can use it. We at DMH do manual dissection and we are pretty comfortable with it. Now after doing the donor dissection on the artificial chamber and preparing the donor tissue, we go ahead with the cataract surgery. Cataract surgery in such patients is a little difficult because of the edematous cornea, hazy cornea. The view is not very good, but then you proceed. The video is a bit slow, so please bear with me. So you proceed with the cataract surgery. You'll have to, this particular video is slow. I don't know why, but I've run that many times, but it is a bit slow. I'm sorry for that. Yeah. So now here you can see after the cataract surgery is done, the lens is in place. Now what we do is we remove the descemet membrane of the recipient cornea. The inner layer of the recipient cornea, which is damaged, which is not good. You can see this fold here. That is what we are removing. It is called as descemet stripping or descemet scoring. This is the descemet membrane of the recipient, which is now out. You can see it is nice, round and circular. And then these are certain steps which some people do, some people don't. But I am not forwarding this video because again it will stop. Now what you do is you insert the removed prepared donor button. Only the inner layer of the cornea that you have dissected out of the donor tissue is gently inserted inside the anterior chamber, and then the wound is secured with one single suture. So unlike routine corneal transplant of penetrating or anterior lamellar, where you have 16 or 24 or 12 sutures, here you have only one suture, and then you inject air bubble inside the anterior chamber to maintain the position of this corneal button. And here, this is the way how you insert the button inside the anterior chamber and secure it to the bare area from where you have removed the descements. So this is descemet stripping endothelial keratoplasty. Then centering of the button is done, and the results, if you see, are really good. So these are some patients. If you can see, this is the pre-op and this is post-op. Again, this is pre-op and this is post-op. This patient particularly, this is a regraft where a penetrating corneal transplant was done for infectious keratitis. The graft rejected and it failed. In fact, it decompensated. So there was only edema. There wasn't any scar on the cornea. So such candidates are also good candidates for descemet stripping endothelial keratoplasty, and this is the outcome. This particular last left corner, the lower left corner, is the patient whose video you saw right now. Again, this is similar kind of patient with the bullous keratopathy. Bullous keratopathy is a condition where the endothelium is not functioning good and you have corneal edema. And this is post Descemet stripping endothelial keratoplasty. So basically, this is layer by layer transplant of the cornea. You do have certain problems where the graft doesn't heal properly, the edema doesn't resolve properly. But again, I will skip the problems part of this because it would be a very elaborate lecture. But you do have problems. Every surgery would have problems. But these problems are easily manageable. Now, particularly in this case, if the button is dislodged, it is not properly adherent, you can inject gas. You have gases available which are SF6 and C3F8 gases, which the retina surgeons generally use. Those are isoexpansile gases, which you can inject in the anterior chamber and tamponade the button. But there are problems which can be handled. As I said, there are exclusion criteria, inclusion criteria. Basically, exclusion and inclusion criteria is which patient needs what kind of surgery. It should be very properly guided, because if you have a patient with anterior scar and if you do this kind of surgery, it will not help. If the scar is peripheral, as in this patient, and the cornea is decompensated, you can have a central clear cornea after Descemet stripping endothelial keratoplasty, which will not hamper the vision. If you have a scar in the stroma in the center, the vision will not be good. So eventually the surgery that you've done would not be helpful to the patient. Okay, so immunosuppression. Now, all corneal transplants, there are two schools of thought. Systemic immunosuppression for long periods is generally not needed for corneal transplants, because cornea being avascular and the anterior chamber being devoid of the immune modulators, or it being immune deficient, generally immunosuppression systemic level is not needed for these transplants, in spite of they being the allografts. But some patients who by chance are on immunosuppression for some other conditions like kidney or liver, definitely I have seen that they fare well as compared to those who are not on immunosuppression. Now, as Suchi Smita was telling, you have OCT, where OCT will tell you whether the corneal button that you've placed in is well attached to it or not. So again, after injecting the gas, you can see this OCT is showing that the button is very well attached to the donor cornea or the recipient cornea. There shouldn't be any gap between and this thickness that you can see, it resolves after a week or so. Again, these are certain examples. Now, ultra thin manual dissect is a technique which I personally have started doing. What I basically do, I take a metered blade and then cut the donor tissue for a particular thickness that I want, that is 350 microns or so, and then manually guide my dissection blade into that. So the donor button that I get is very, very thin, and the result is much better than what happens when you dissect that donor tissue to get the Descemet's layer. It comes with a little bit of stroma. So the lesser the stroma you have, the better is the result. Now, the next kind of surgery that they're doing is DMEC, where they take only the Descemet's membrane, where there is absolutely no stroma, and the results there are much, much better than what you see in DSEC. Now, ultra thin DSEC, if you can see on this OCT, if you can remember the previous OCT that I showed you, the thickness of the donor button was a little more than this. So this is what I've been doing. Now, this button initially wasn't attached properly. After injecting gas, you can see this gas bubble here in the OCT lower below, and the button is well attached. So there are certain small problems that you face, but they can be taken care of. As I said, DMEC or PDEC, now this is just a photograph of a donor tissue where you can see this bulge inside. Now, if you can remember the first video that I showed you, where we inject a bubble to separate the Descemet's from the stroma to do a deep anterior lamellar keratoplasty on a recipient bed. Similarly, a bubble is injected on the donor tissue between the stroma and the Descemet's, where you can get this kind of separation of Descemet's, and this tissue is then excised and used for DMEC. There is a learning curve is more in these kinds of surgeries, but the outcome is good. Now, finally, lastly, we come to our last video, the keratoprosthesis. Now, keratoprosthesis is only for end-stage corneal diseases. That means if the corneal graft has failed more than twice, then what we do is a keratoprosthesis. Now, keratoprosthesis basically consists of one titanium ring, small this titanium, and PMMA backplate, which has fenestrations. This PMMA backplate and the titanium ring, along with the optical cylinder, as you will see in the video, this is the optical cylinder. It has a 3 mm diameter optical cylinder with about 5 mm ring in the anterior part to prevent its dislodgement inside the eye and prevent the cornea from extruding out. So it has two parts. First part is the assembly. Now for assembly, how eye donation serves the purpose, because even for keratoprosthesis, what we need is the donor tissue. So basic donor tissue is what you need to have. So basic donor tissue is what you need to have, and the donor tissue is refined and cut as you would do otherwise for a penetrating keratoplasty, full thickness without removing any layers. And then you punch a central 3 mm hole. Okay, after punching the central 3 mm hole in the donor tissue, why that hole is needed? Because that donor tissue goes onto the optical cylinder, with that optical cylinder fits into the central 3 mm hole. So the first part of the assembly building is the donor tissue with the central 3 mm hole is mounted onto the optical cylinder. After mounting it onto the optical cylinder, the next you have is the PMMA fenestrated backplate, which also has a central 3 mm opening that is mounted onto the optical cylinder after the donor tissue. You have to take care not to touch the optical cylinder in the front or the back to avoid scratches and visual disturbance later on. So after this backplate is put, then last part of the assembly is the titanium backplate. The titanium ring. The titanium ring is put there in place and it is pushed inside with a plunger. This model helps to basically fix the assembly together. So the 5-6 mm plate in the anterior of the optical cylinder and the titanium ring behind will hold the assembly of the backplate and the corneal tissue together. This is how the assembly of the keratoprosthesis is done. After the keratoprosthesis assembly is done, I will not show you the detailed surgical part because it's in a little more intricacies. But anyway, you can see that. This is how the end stage cornea looks, where the graft has been done twice or thrice and it has eventually failed. The dissection has to be neat, nice, free of any blood clots, free of exudative membranes. This comes in two modes, aphakic and pseudophakic, but let's not go into those details. And finally, the tissue is the entire assembly is secured with 12 sutures or 16 sutures, and as you do in a routine keratoplasty. So even the basic principle of this is, even if there is rejection or failure, the entire peripheral cornea will fail and vascularize and go opaque, but the central optical cylinder would always remain clear and intact, and that would help the visibility. So now this is the patient who has an end-stage corneal disease where it has failed 3 times. So doing keratoplasty again is not a good option. So keratoprosthesis. Now this is a Boston keratoprosthesis surgery that you saw, but we do have orokeratoprosthesis made by Arvind Eye System in Oro Labs, Coimbatore. This is how it looks on the patient's eye. So patients if you have patients who are saying that we have done corneal transplant twice or thrice and it has failed, still there is a ray of hope. We can at least give a last chance or a last try if the eye has the visual potential. This is how it looks on a slit lamp. As I said, the peripheral cornea can vascularize, can fail, but the central optical cylinder remains clear and gives good vision to the patient. Instead of using the bandage contact lens, as you saw in the video, I have started doing tarsorrhaphy for all my keratoprosthesis patients, because some patients come from periphery, from villages where they cannot maintain the contact lens. So tarsorrhaphy serves the purpose. This is how a keratoprosthesis looks on a OCT. Now these are patients with like oral cicatricial pemphigoid, Stevens-Johnson syndrome, severe dry eye, where the keratoplasty is bound to fail, but the surface hasn't lost its complete wettability. Those can be good candidates for Boston keratoprosthesis. It also has complications. It can give melting around the optical cylinder, but they can be handled now. For this particular patient, we again did a ring implant around the central optical cylinder. Okay, so this is the third way in which a donor tissue can be used in its entirety, but as a part of it because central 3 mm has to be removed. And the last part probably is patch grafts, where you have small little parts of the cornea which are melting, like for rheumatoid arthritis, peripheral keratitis, or certain conditions where only small little area of the cornea is involved, infected, where you need not do an entire big corneal transplant to avoid this risk. You can do small patch grafts, 3 mm. I have done 3 millimeter patch grafts also. Now, as you particularly see in this patient, the Descemet's membrane of the patient is intact, only the stroma is melting. In that case, I have used this patch graft and I haven't taken any sutures. I use it with a fibrin glue and a bandage contact lens to avoid any scarring and astigmatism, and it helps nicely. It works nicely. It gives a fairly good vision as compared to sutures. This is one of the patients who had a squamous cell carcinoma. So we can use the transparent portion of the eye, that is the cornea, and the white portion of the sclera of the donor to combine. We harvested the donor in such a way that equal amounts of cornea and sclera were matching to the recipient bed. After removing the squamous cell carcinoma, doing cryo treatment, we did a patch graft. Again, this is a small little melt you can see here, where we have done a small little patch graft. Again, without only one single suture was taken so that it doesn't drop out. The rest was with fibrin glue and bandage contact lens. It gives you a very good surface. So I think that was all for the practitioners. You can be the mainstay to guide people to donate eyes by counseling the relatives, and also guiding patients as to tell them what kind of surgeries are available for them now. Thank you all for your kind attention, and thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Joshi sir and Rupa madam. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It was a spellbound lecture. To summarize, we came to know new things about lamellar surgeries, anterior lamellar transplant. We came to know about the 6 layers of cornea, the DSEK, and the systemic immunosuppression, which is not needed after the corneal transplant, the ultra thin manual DSEK. And it was a treat to listen to all the experts. We thank Dr. Shrikant Joshi sir, Dr. Devika ma'am, Dr. Suchi ma'am, Dr. Datar sir. We are now open to all the questions. Are there any questions?
Sir, I had one question, Dr. Rupa here.
Yeah.
My question was, like in Dr. Devika's presentation, she has mentioned about removing the whole eyeball. Like there are 2 methods. One is removing only the main part of cornea and removing the eyeball. So with some training, proper surgical training to the doctors, to general practitioners, can they become part of this eye donation activity? Like, is it possible for a general practitioner to learn that skill of taking the eye after death of the person?
Yes, ma'am. If the doctor undergoes certain training in eye banking and its procedures, including such procedures like enucleation, they can be part of the eye bank team, and they can do these procedures of eye donation.
One more question. What are the precautions to be taken after keratoprosthesis? Like after the patient goes home with keratoprosthesis?
Keratoprosthesis definitely has its own set of complications. For example, the precautions that the patient needs to take is keratoprosthesis patients are fitted with a bandage contact lens, which remains there for life, and they have to change it every 7 days or every 3 weeks, depending on what. You will have some refractive error. Accordingly, the glasses can be prescribed with the refraction in it. And if there is no refractive error, and if the patient is seeing without glasses, protective glasses are always advised.
Okay. Okay.
One more question from me.
Yeah.
Dr. Shilpa here. The question is to Dr. Datar sir. Sir, in diabetic, this is a common question which we get in our OPDs. In diabetic retinopathy patients with total blindness, how would this eye transplant help? Or are there any newer advances to get their vision back?
In diabetic retinopathy, primarily what is affected is the retina. And there are newer modalities of treatment as far as retina is concerned. But as far as corneal transplant is concerned, all we can do is use the corneal tissue, which absolutely has no role in diabetic retinopathy patients. Because diabetic retinopathy patients will have a clear cornea and a damaged retina. So there is no scope for any corneal transplant and vision regaining in these patients as far as eye donation is concerned. They need to have a retina specialist at hand.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot, sir.
Hello, sir. So any role of stem cell in retinal damage and this thing, retinal blindness?
Stem cells are extensively used for more than 20 years now as far as cornea and ocular surface is concerned. But for retina, they are not yet used, maybe just in the laboratory, that also on rats and mice, but not routinely in humans. So we are still a little bit far away from that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So any questions now?
Just one last thing I would like to mention is, as far as general practitioners doing enucleation and eye donation is concerned, you need to be associated, as Devika said, you can take proper training but you need to be associated with some eye bank and transplantation center, and that's only then you can go for eye donation if at all you wish.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. So thank you very much, sir. Hello, Shilpa ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any more questions from the participants?
Dr. Shilpa, before we end, we have one of our Dr. Keshav Gujrati with us. We all know Dr. Keshav Gujrati, sir. Sir, ते mute करायला लागेल तुम्हाला. हां, या. बस ऐका. ते सर त्यांचे स्टिकर आणा ना तिकडून पटकन. केशव गुजराती सर म्हणजे वयाने थोडेसे सिनियर जरी असले तरीही केशव गुजराती सर प्रत्येक जीपीएच्या ऍक्टिव्हिटी मध्ये वेगवेगळ्या प्रकारे त्यांच्या नॉट जस्ट म्हणजे फायनान्शियल कॉन्ट्रीब्युशन नाही म्हणते, फिजिकली ऍक्टिव्ह कॉन्ट्रीब्युशन सरांचा असतो. आणि त्याच हिशोबाने आजच्या ह्याच्यामध्ये ऍज एव्हरीवन नोज की आपण ह्याच्यामध्ये काय प्रकारे लोकांना अवेअरनेस क्रिएट करण्यासाठी काय काय माध्यम यूज करू शकतो ह्यासाठी ट्राय करत होतो. आणि डॉक्टर गुजराती सर took the responsibility of printing few stickers for the participating doctors. आणि सरांनी सर तुम्ही
स्टिकर्स आहेत, जस्ट इनॅग्रेट करू आपण.
तर
यस मॅडम.
मी धरते, तुम्ही बोलायसाठी.
अशा सगळ्या स्टिकर्स आहेत. आणि ज्या वेळेला आपण आय डोनेशन फॉर्म पेशंट कडनं भरून घेतो, पण तो जर त्यांनी घरात कोणाला सांगितलं नसेल की मला आय डोनेट करायचं, तर मग घरचे काही वेळेला वेळेला रिफ्यूज करतात किंवा त्यांच्याशी आपल्याला तेवढं कॉन्टॅक्ट होता येत नाही. तर हे जर स्टिकर त्याने घरामध्ये लावलं, दोन गोष्टी होतील. घरच्यांच्या सतत एक हॅमरिंग होत राहील की अरे बाबा घरात कोणीतरी आय डोनेशन केलेलं आहे, आणि घरात येणारा प्रत्येक पाहुणा, नातेवाईक, मित्र प्रत्येकाला कळतं की अरे बाबा इथे आय डोनेशन केलेलं आहे. आणि त्यामुळे आय डोनेशनची कन्सेप्ट आणखी जास्त आपल्याला अनेक लोकांपर्यंत पोहोचवता येऊ शकते.
आणि तशाच प्रकारे आय थिंक क्लिनिक मध्ये लावल्यानंतर सेम इफेक्ट पेशंट साठी.
आपण आपल्या क्लिनिक मध्ये एक एक स्टिकर लावलं तर पेशंटना सुद्धा त्यात काही ना काहीतरी एक मोटिवेशन मिळू शकेल. या ह्याच्यातून मी आता ही स्टिकर्स थोडी तयार करून आणलेली आहेत.
सरांचा खूप सारा धन्यवाद या सगळ्या ऍक्टिव्हिटीसाठी.
खूप धन्यवाद सर.
येस डॉक्टर शिल्पा प्लीज.
Yeah.
त्याचे आपल्याला हे नंतर टाकतील का याच्यामध्ये ग्रुपमध्ये?
ग्रेट लाईव्स नेवर गो आउट, दे गो ऑन. थोरांचे जीवन हे कधी नष्ट होत नसते, ते अखंड चालूच राहत असते. हे शरीर परोपकारासाठी आहे. नेत्रदान करून आपण आपले भाग्य विधाते बनू शकतो. तसेच समाजरूप फेडण्याचीही संधी या दानातून आपल्याला मिळते. नेत्रदानामुळं देवाने दिलेली दृष्टी देवाला अर्पण केल्याचे समाधानही मिळेल. आकाशातला तारा होता नाही आलं तरी कोणाच्या तरी नेत्रातील दिवा झाल्यास आपण स्वतःही प्रकाशित होऊ शकतो. नुसते मरण्यापेक्षा मरून जगण्याचा योग निश्चितच लाभू शकतो. आज आपल्या उपदेशक विचारवंतांनी आपल्याला उत्तम मार्ग दाखवला आहे. आता आचारवंत होण्याची गरज आहे. मित्रांनो, परवापासून अधिक मास सुरू होतोय. जवळजवळ 160 वर्षांनी आलेल्या या पुरुषोत्तम मासात दानाची कल्पना अत्यंत पुण्यप्रद मानली आहे. आपणही या शाश्वत दानाची फलप्राप्ती करूया. पोथ्या पुराणांच्या वाचनासोबतच नेत्रदानाच्या पुण्यासाठी आपण आपल्या सोबत इतरांनाही जागृत करूया, प्रोत्साहित करूया. दिव्या दिव्यांची ज्योत लावूया, पुण्य मार्गाने सारे जाऊया. दिव्य व्यक्ती बनता नाही आले तरी दिव्य दृष्टी देऊन पुरुषोत्तम मास नक्कीच साजरा करू शकतो. It was indeed a wonderful intellectual divine session of eye donation drive of GPA in collaboration with DMH. I take an opportunity on behalf of myself and Dr. Gundecha to thank all our eminent speakers and DMH team, our scientific chairman, Dr. Mahajan sir and Dr. Garak sir, all the enthusiastic participants, and our technical partners, Digital. Thank you. Let's follow the take-home message of today's session. You back your vision. Thank you.